Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 98 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, it's Monday, November 21st, 2016, and right now, a very sizable proportion of the population of North Yorkshire are staying in hotels in and around central London, ready to descend upon the Royal Courts of Justice tomorrow, where the first day of the judicial review regarding North Yorkshire County Council's decision to grant Third Energy permission to frack an existing well at Kirby Misperton in North Yorkshire will be heard. Now, this is scheduled for a two-day hearing, but the first order of business is whether or not the judges regard the judicial review to actually have really any due cause or due justification. Assuming that they decide that there is a justification for the judicial review to be heard, then they will immediately proceed with the hearing. So by Wednesday, we will know whether or not the High Courts have agreed with the North Yorkshire County Council majority decision, primarily, of course, it's Tory held, to grant that permission. Now, I'm sure like most of us, and whilst the people of North Yorkshire are holding their breath, I think we can all pretty much, sadly, predict what the outcome's likely to be. But I am delighted tonight to welcome two guests who have been on a number of past issues of Fracking Nightmare. And these are two people who represent the community that has actually succeeded in what I consider to be the most successful anti-fracking campaign in the country to date. And the reason why I consider this to be the most successful campaign is because this was an existing well. It was a well that had permission from East Riding County Council to be fracked, to be test fracked. Yet on August the 12th of 2015, Rathlin Energy announced that they would be withdrawing from Crawberry Hill and that the location would be returned to its former agricultural glory, which is the case. So consequently, it is my great pleasure to welcome Jon and Val Mager to episode 98 of Fracking Nightmare. So hi guys, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks. Yeah. Still holding in the way of Rathlin UK, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Well, Rathlin, of course, have been interesting adversaries. You know, some of the story is for public consumption, some not. But I mean, that August the 12th of last year, so that's what now, 15 months ago. But I mean, you guys must have been absolutely cock-a-hoop when Rathlin made that announcement.
Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic because following the eviction of the protection camp, which also had a vital role to play in this battle at Crawberry Hill, in January, there's a group of 12, 15 of us, all, I think, retired. And we were up there on a regular basis, almost every day, rain, wind, frost, snow. And I think there was an important message, and we gained increasing notoriety, popularity from the community, and it was part of Rathlin's departure, I'm sure.
And that date kind of ended the phony war that had gone on for such a long time as well. So it was brilliant. Yeah, it was. I don't know. Final accolade.
It was a good day. It was a good day. The disappointment was that it was only, I think, 3 weeks later that Quadrilla's licence was announced for the northern part of the East Riding. But interestingly, Quadrilla haven't made any serious moves. I mean, they promised they were going to do seismic testing and all the rest of it. But they too are engaged in a phony war now, where they're sort of measuring what they can and can't do, but aren't doing very much at all.
Well, we'll come back to Quadrilla. In fact, we'll come back to the whole of the north of England in just a second. I got a couple of great photographs that I really like. I mean, this first one. Let's bring that up on screen here. I mean, I think this was actually on one of the evictions. I think this was the eviction of Crawberry Castle. Is that right?
That's
July
right.
one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was after the High Court injunction that you and I unsuccessfully contested here.
Yeah, that was. I mean, Crawberry Castle for me was, quite an expensive piece of real estate. But I mean, we were there for 3 months, and it played its part, of course, in the sequence of events that led Rathlin to pull out there. And this photograph, I mean, this is on the date. This is early May, I think, of 2014.
May the 15th.
May the 15th. I thought the date might be indelibly printed on your brain, because this is, of course, Humberside Police trying to enter into discussion with your both of you. And unfortunately for the police, the discussion didn't end well, and you both elected to be arrested.
Yeah.
Where to start? I think that would be the first week of the protection camp when that actually happened, and we'd been on our way to Brighton, but we dropped by the camp to drop something off for the protectors who were there, and there were police all over the place, and we found out that the contractor who was trying to get onto the site had knocked down one of the protectors who'd been taken off to hospital, and no health and safety had been put in place at all.
The driver was sent home to have a cup of tea. Wasn't arrested, never charged with anything. Yeah.
And
we thought enough was enough.
So we thought we'd make a stand.
Or in John's case, a sit.
Yeah.
So it just developed, there was a sense of the inevitable about it, but yeah, they spoke to me. John was meditating.
Well, if we go back to that photograph, we can just see John's head there in the bottom left-hand corner there. There's John's head. So yeah, you were deep in meditation, and Val was conducting negotiations on your behalf.
Yes.
So I just realised, of course, it's Val's fault that you were arrested.
No, I could have in the discussion if I wanted, but I think, meditation is a well-established form of protest, and it was calming things down. It's a pity the police didn't stay calm, but there you go. It was very clear to us that they had arrived with the intention of arresting the entire protection camp. Yeah. They had two or three prison vans and so on. And I think, but I'd like to think that at least we managed to stop the removal of the camp, because there's a clear message here, Ian. It's not one or the other, it's both. There is a need for protection camps, but there is also a need for the community to take responsibility themselves, to stand up and be counted, and not just once, but on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would not only concur, but I would make the observation that, I mean, the sole purpose, really, of the protection camp is to assist the process of raising awareness in the wider community. Because ultimately, I mean, I think, as we will see time and time and time again, there are occasions when the protection camp has perhaps been absolutely definitive in the decision of the company to withdraw from a particular location. I mean, I think that Upton, there's no doubt whatsoever that the long-term presence of the Upton protection camp was very instrumental or influential in IGAS deciding not to pursue that particular location. But part of the reason for that was that because the camp had been there for so long, obviously there was an extremely intimate relationship with the local community, and the local community were extremely supportive of the camp, and IGAS could see for themselves that, if the camp was removed, and of course it was eventually evicted, but I think within a week or 2 weeks of the eviction, they announced that they were effectively going to withdraw from that site. But I think the pattern is more normally going to be what we saw at Crawberry Hill, where there were some members of the local community obviously involved right from the get-go, but the camp being there for 8 months or so, from the May until the following January, that served effectively to galvanize the surrounding communities And once the camp was evicted in January, late January, finally evicted in January of 2015, I mean, that was when the local community, and I know you affectionately refer to yourselves and the other members of this community as the Geri-Activists, which is a bit of a giveaway in terms of the average age. But
Yeah.
and I, some people think that it's a derogatory term, but I mean, please, assure me and assure the viewers that when we talk about Geri-Activists, it's a term of endearment.
Yes, definitely. I think there's another development that we need to explain, and Val takes the credit for this. When we got round to sort of June time, it was obvious that Rathlin had run out of time at Crawberry. They weren't going to be able to complete what they wanted to do, had they ever intended to do it at that point, within the planning permission. And we then developed, Val raised the idea, we developed the idea of pop-ups where we went out to local villages. And what was remarkable about that was how much enthusiasm and support that generated.
Well, we got some pictures of the pop-up. So, I mean, Val, just talk us through what's occurring in each of these pictures.
Just before that, Ian, I'd say that the local community, and you've said about Geri-Activists, we could do it. We could be there during the day when other people couldn't. We could be a constant presence there because people were working, and I mean that worked to our advantage all the time. So I think that's really important that that we were continually there because we were able to be there.
And one of the key members said, I mean, she said it on TV news, that this sort of activity ought to be on the national health because it's so good for old people to get out and get active, get some fresh air and get engaged with things. And she felt that, more older people would benefit from this sort of social activism. But anyway, go through about Cherry Burton.
I think Cherry Burton was probably the third pop-up that we did. I'm not quite sure why we chose that. I think probably because it's a very busy road through the village, and I'm not sure if the parish council had been particularly they were quite hostile to us anyway. Yeah. So we went there usually each time there were about 12 of us with our banners and placards. Yeah. People came from the houses, local people joined us and stood with us. We were there probably 3 times over the 6 months that we did it. And each time there were more people joined us. Yeah. People, the same people saw us driving past and were supportive. And, it was good because people saw us in different locations as well. Yeah. And, they found that exciting. And the fact that they'd seen us outside Crawberry in the middle of winter in January and February when the weather was really bad, when it was snowing and there were 5 or 6 of us standing there, with scarves and hats and obviously not particularly young, but it just highlighted how important the issue was to us.
Well, I just want to go back to one of the points that you mentioned just now, and that is that was it Judy or whomever who said that this should be on the national health?
You said it, yeah.
But I mean, one of the senses that I got, and I see this elsewhere as well. I mean, I've seen it in North Yorkshire. I've seen it in Horse Hill in Surrey. I've certainly seen it recently in Leith Hill. And what we're finding is that people are becoming involved. For many of them, they're now retirees, and it's the first time ever they have had cause or felt the need or the motivation to actually challenge the establishment. And in some cases, it's actually given them a renewed will to live. It's given them a new lease of life.
It's the comradeship, isn't it? You're doing something. You're doing it for your grandchildren. You're doing it for the community, for the environment, and you've got a shared purpose, and it's that in itself is really important. At the Bishop Burton one, I've just remembered there was a lady joined us there who was a Tory, a Tory through and through, but she came and stood with us, and she later told Graham Stewart that she'd never vote for the Conservatives again. And, that was heartening as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to emphasise that this is a very broad group as well. And, there are a number of lifelong Tory voters, and in the case that I was just mentioned, paid up members of the local Conservative Association that have seen this as an issue which really betrays all the values that these rural communities stand by. This sort of riding roughshod over people's rights, people's interests, and so on, because of the greed of an individual farmer that owns the land and so on. And of course, this will be replicated wherever these issues pop up, because by their nature, most of these fracking applications are going to be in rural communities. And in contrast to America, they're always going to be near a well-established village community with people that didn't ever expect this. I mean, there's been some very tragic stories, Ian. There's the family that chose a retirement home for its extreme remote rural quietness and found that they were living next to the West Newton A well and then next to the new West Newton B site, which is yet to start. And they've sold up and they've lost hundreds of thousands of pounds that they've invested in doing up a dilapidated farmhouse and so on. They cannot stand the thought of living there with their elderly mother. Their dreams are in ruins. I mean, you know the story. But this will be replicated across the country. And this is why many Conservative MPs know this is not going to work. This is not going to run.
Well, and you made a very important and very valid point, of course. And I mean, I've obviously, done work with a number of communities around the country. And the one thing that is very, very common is that people come from pretty much every political background, every philosophical background, and every religious background. And, I am sure that, in fact, I've heard some very, very interesting discussion and debate, fortunately in the right spirit. But the key point to focus on is that there is one issue that unites everybody in this community. So it doesn't matter what your political leanings, what your religious views, or, what your philosophy or your worldview, that the focus within these groups is stopping this abomination, this unconventional gas exploitation. And this, I think, is almost unique, in that you cannot put a label on the anti-fracking community because it literally covers the full spectrum.
But if not on a sort of global issue at all, but just it's about defending your community as well. It's politics. You may not be particularly political, but your community is everything that you have. Yeah. And if it's threatened, you've got to get involved. You've got to be there. And I think that that's what really brings people together. Because if you have any idea of what fracking is going to do to the environment, to the place that you live, you've got to do something. And it's just a question, really, of persuading everybody, or persuading everybody to look for themselves.
Exactly. Well, we've got some more pictures. This is a different pop-up. How many do you think you did over the course of the period?
Maybe 20. Maybe 30.
No, I don't think we did.
We ended up going out twice a week, I think. And the point is, when you say us, it wasn't always us. We had a rota. And, if we were away or we had something else to do, there would be other people turning out.
But it was the same sort of hardcore.
Yeah, there was about 15. I mean, you can see some of the familiar faces here. And, let's emphasise that there are quite a few of those people that are well into their 80s and not at all well, that are feeling very rejuvenated. That one previously, I think, was at Skirlot outside the. No, that's at Sproatley, which we call the gateway to the gas fields, because that's on a road that leads to the existing Aldborough gas storage facilities for the Norwegian gas that's coming in. But that's why the West Newton wells are where they are, because it would be a very short pipeline if those wells ever got established into the national grid pipeline for gas coming off the North Sea.
Okay, well, that's a good point to take a break, and it's a key point you raised there because we want to talk about a difference of strategy between these companies. And the point you make here is that Rathlin Energy are an exploratory company, but their ultimate goal, should they ever get established in a particular location, but their ultimate goal is to put the gas into the national grid. And we're going to look at another company in a second that has a slightly different agenda. But the point that I think is crucial here is that, even though it was only maybe a dozen, 15, 20 people or whatever, the fact that you were all dedicated to raising awareness of this issue and you were getting out into the communities with your pop-up protests and you were available to go to the well site. And of course, neither the police nor Rathlin Energy wanted to arrest the Geri-Activists because everyone there was a fine, upstanding member of the community. They'd given service to the community in many ways. I mean, I think there was counsellors amongst the group.
A number of teachers, qualified, experienced teachers. You've got a former chief librarian. You've got myself, former director of education, but also a national director working to ministers in London. You've got someone who's worked for NASA on the space shuttle. He's got a wall covered in medals, thanks from each of the space shuttle teams for his contribution. A senior probation officer. Now, these are all people, and it leads on to the attack on the anti-fracking movement in the East Riding that's currently taking place under anti-terrorism law. But these are all people that have been police checked. In my case, the highest possible security clearance, because I was allowed into the House of Commons and the Department for Education, direct access to ministers and so on. So, we're, as you say, we're members of the community. We have a background which doesn't really make us suitable to be characterised as mad terrorists and all the rest of it. It's ridiculous.
Domestic extremists, tree huggers, hippies, benefit scroungers. I mean, all the labels that the mainstream or lamestream media, as they call it, the lamestream media like to try to use to demonize the community. And, this beautiful group of Geri-Activists in East Yorkshire have proven, the power of your commitment. And
can I just
go on?
Just say, of all the things that we did, writing letters, leafleting, knocking on people's doors, meetings, whatever, the pop-ups and that group, I just think that was the most potent thing we did.
Yeah, and it because what we haven't mentioned is the way people would either walk by and stop or stop their cars, get out. And in these villages, people would just come up and just say thank you. But among them, there'd be younger people that would join in and all the rest of it.
Yeah. Well, you guys took that as your initiative. I mean, this is again the beauty of.
Just though, I want to be clear about this. We don't own it. It's the group as a whole.
No, that's what I mean. When I say you, I'm talking about you're the Geri-Activist group. And of course, there was also others there that perhaps don't fall into that age bracket that were extremely supportive as well. But, the beauty is it was a community initiative and a very powerful initiative. And, this is the great thing about the anti-fracking community, because it's a loose-knit network of, some, probably close to 1,000 now, very autonomous individual groups, then they're all using different initiatives, and basically we haven't got a panacea. There maybe is no panacea. It's whatever it is that feels it works. And I just want to share another initiative because in South Yorkshire, not too far away from you guys, this initiative has been going on for quite some time now, and this was initiated by I believe Barnsley. I think it was the Barnsley local group, but it's now sort of spreading elsewhere in South Yorkshire. And this is Do Your Street, the Do Your Street campaign. South Yorkshire is threatened by fracking, but does your neighbour? Do your street. Help raise awareness by delivering leaflets And so the group are fundraising to get the leaflets printed. And then members of the South Yorkshire anti-fracking community are literally then canvassing their street and the neighbouring streets to spread awareness. And in Misson, they did a poll, and I think they did the same in Borkham down in Sussex in 2013. By getting out and canvassing people, getting their views, and if they tell you they're pro-fracking, then you have the opportunity to have a discussion with them, or at least leave information with them.
Yeah, I mean, Newbold here, very good activism there, where they did a full-on village survey and hand-delivered a survey to every house, followed it up, and of course could report that over 90% of people in the village were opposed to fracking. Near a gas well site, but of course that village isn't on the gas mains and never will be. So they're expected to sacrifice the water supply, which comes directly from the aquifer, and the map shows that it's an environmentally sensitive aquifer with a very great drill pad right through it. So their water supply is going to be affected, but they're never going to benefit from the gas because there's never any plan to connect that small village to the gas mains. Ridiculous.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about not just one community, but people living in 1 million acres who are potentially going to be living in sacrifice zones and who will never see the benefit of what is being potentially mined from beneath them. But we're going to take a break, and in this break, we're going to look again at a short clip from the documentary Voices from the Gas Fields. And this is Brian and David Monk. And in this, they're making the point that the only people that stop this abomination is you. It's not somebody else. There's nobody coming along in a white Charger. It's not Jon Val Mager. It's not Ian Crane. It's not anybody else. It's you. So take a look at this.
If at this point in time you can stand in front of a drill rig, then stop it from getting on. The easiest drill rig to stop's the first one. The hardest one will be the 10,000. It'll be more than that though in the UK, because you're doing shale over there predominantly. Shale needs a lot of wells, leads a lot of destruction, poisons a lot of water.
If this gets the tiniest foothold, you're done. So it's now or it's never. Don't think that you've got that long, because it's now or never. So you do it now, you stand up now, and you find something within yourself that you didn't think was there. That's the important thing. You will be confronted by police. They wear their Kevlar suits and it's a big intimidation thing.
Hey, you've got nobody in front of you. Keep walking. You're delaying this lady. Keep going. Don't push back on her. Keep moving. Now. If you've got to keep going. Keep moving, please.
It's up to the people of the UK to get their cameras in the face of the Kevlar security, the Kevlar police who are paid by the corporations. And we have to say no. That's all it is. But it's more than just saying no at a meeting. It's intent. It's the intent of no. It's the knowing that you mean no. That's when you will be unbelievably powerful. You come out in numbers. If they see your grandmother and the mother and the child come out and say, we are not going to accept this, then they are finished. But that's what it takes. Don't sit back and think that anybody's looking out for you. It's you.
So David Monk's final comments there. Don't think that anyone else is looking out for you. It's you. Now, Jon and Val, coincidentally, today it is exactly 20 months since we premiered that documentary in the Tolgavil in Beverley. And of course, the reason that we premiered it in Beverley was because the East Yorkshire community contributed a significant amount of the funding that we needed for the editing of the documentary. So on YouTube, it's had something allegedly like about 38,000 views. That's from my channel, my YouTube channel. Obviously, it's elsewhere, and I encourage people to download it and share it around or put it up on their YouTube channel to spread the word. So, I mean, what's your thoughts? Are you in agreement with David and Brian there?
Obviously, yeah. People have got to stand up and be counted. It's simple. And that is powerful because the industry and this government in particular is going all out now to label label people against fracking as part of domestic extremism, and they're going further in the East Riding. They're labelling us as akin to ISIS. They're actually saying here that in terms of radicalisation, the far right, the animal rights protesters in the East Riding and the anti-frackers in the East Riding are a greater threat than ISIS. Now, this is deadly serious stuff. And the only way to counter this is to put your head above the parapet, stand up and be counted, because otherwise it's the thin end of a very, very nasty wedge.
Now, I believe you have an incident, John, where actually in the prevent training in a school, the anti-fracking community was actually labelled as domestic extremism.
That's right. I mean, the school sent out a newsletter to parents, and this is how it came to light, that they were going to do training. The background is that there is training for head teachers and teachers as part of the anti-radicalisation programme, Prevent, that it was Theresa May, of course, that launched this when she was Home Secretary. But this school at Driffield, which is in the heart of the Quadrilla potential gas field, and there's 500 now supporters of the Driffield anti-fracking group, they wrote to parents and said the greatest resource in the Prevent campaign is devoted to ISIS, but in the East Riding, the main priorities are far-right extremism, animal rights and anti-fracking. And ironically, it says that the definition of radicalisation is when young people adopt increasingly extreme political or social views that undermine contemporary ideas and expressions or freedom of choice. Well, what a joke. We've got freedom of speech in this country. We've got freedom of political views. We don't have the right to inflict those views on others by violence, but we have the right to hold those views. We've got Article 10, human right, freedom of expression. We've got Article 14, freedom from discrimination because of your political or social views. This is outrageous. Now, a parent who is part of the anti-fracking and typically also part of running a farm, you know, again, not a stereotypical anti-fracker as the media would have it. She's on her way now. She's finally got the school to agree to a meeting where she plans to ask them a few questions. Because, I mean, as a former history teacher, but also, by the way, in my first job when I came to the East Riding in 2000, I was asked to go out and brief head teachers and governing bodies about the meaning of the new human rights legislation. And I gave them a history lesson and pointed out that the Human Rights Charter was introduced by Churchill at the end of the last war to inoculate Europe against the risk of fascism or Stalinism. It was to protect rights across Europe. And what are these people doing now? This government is deliberately undermining our rights by seeking to portray me and Val, the hundreds of people that are active, the thousands of people that have written letters. Oh, and by the way, one of the main correspondents that we have at the moment is the former High Sheriff of North Yorkshire. In other words, the Queen's personal representative in North Yorkshire, one of the landed gentry. It's ludicrous, but it's wicked. What's going to happen next? Is some misguided child that receives this training going to go home and work out that their parents are anti-frackers? What are they going to do? Report their parents to the authorities?
It's Germany Post.
Which we're going right back to the 1930s.
Yeah.
And it's at one level it's laughable, but at another level it's deadly serious stuff.
Well, and you couple that with the new surveillance bill that was passed in the immediate aftermath of the US election, when, of course, no one was looking. And, we are now the most surveilled country on the planet. We are more surveilled than Stasi Germany and Soviet Russia. And, of course, the new bill gives power to the investigative bodies, i.e. the police, the government, and pretty much anyone else that's, paying for the access, potentially information on all usage of phones, smartphones, the internet, and of course all of our service providers are now required to keep for 12 months all the history of our internet usage, should it be requested by the authorities in this country. And nowhere else in the world does this apply.
Yeah. I mean, the situation is worse in some ways than pre-war Germany or post-war Russia, because, of course, with modern technology, the sophistication of surveillance is immeasurably greater. And people need to be aware. But it comes back to it time and time again. Stand up and be counted and make your views known. And this has come to light in the East Riding. We know it's also happened in Calderdale. There are several examples now. Part of the training video that used for head teachers shows the arrest of Caroline Lucas MP as an example of a domestic extremist, as the sort of threat that we are living on. Now, once you start saying that democratically elected MPs are a threat, to equate that threat with ISIS, you are really getting into very dangerous territory of indoctrination. And if you start applying this to children, it becomes absolutely outrageous. Absolutely outrageous.
And of course, one of the things that, we have focused on, obviously, the power of the Geri-Activist, but it also has to be acknowledged that, the anti-fracking community, just like it covers, everyone's philosophical, religious beliefs, it also does embrace all age ranges. And we have many wonderful activists, and of course, not least the young lad, Morgan Marshall, the very talented musician from the Fylde. But, when I've been around the country, and it's always a pleasure to talk to teenagers, and in some cases, one case, a preteen, who have done their own research, and in fact, in one case, the parents were telling me that it was the teenager, who I think was 13 or 14, who'd actually educated them and encouraged them to look at what the game plan was, and actually got the parents involved.
And if you've got to look at the science curriculum for the national strategies, which was one of my responsibilities in the previous role, and that talks about environmental awareness. And it also talks about good practice is to find ways of getting children actively involved in putting their environmental awareness into practice. Now, I defend the right of the oil and gas industry and this government to put forward the case that shale gas will be our salvation. But you can't touch on these issues in geography lessons or economics lessons or general discussion and say, but the view that opposes that, they're a bunch of terrorists and you shouldn't listen to them. And if you think one of your classmates is becoming more and more engaged in one of this, quote, terrorist groups, you should tell someone. And then we get these scandalous stories that have already happened of these unfortunate children being hoiked in and questioned by the police without their parents present, which is what the legislation allows for.
Yeah, and then obviously trying to recruit the children to inform on other kids or inform on their parents. Yeah, we are back to the Nazi Germany, where everyone's scared of everyone else, and what an absurdity. Now you had just made an interesting point, Jon, and this gives me a great opportunity to link in here, and that is that one of the emotive arguments put forward by MPs, the political representatives. The political representatives to the community. Should be the other way around, but of course that's what it really is. And the emotive issue is that, look, we're running out of gas, we're importing more and more gas, we need this gas to keep the lights on. I mean, however much of a falsehood, But it's an emotive argument. But there's one company, and of course this is the company that has the most significant acreage in the country, and in particularly the north of England. And let's bring this first slide up, because this is INEOS. Yeah. Now, Third Energy, when we talk about Third Energy are the ones with the license in the blue that's actually behind the label there. So Third Energy are a relatively small player. Now, Third Energy, obviously, this is the argument that Kevin Hollinrake, the MP, puts forward. Third Energy are looking to mine the gas from the unconventional geology to feed into the national grid. In fact, to power up the Knapton generating station. But the acreage in the yellow, which is enormous, they're the largest single license holder in England, and this is INEOS. And in fact, they have this great swath right across North Yorkshire, but they also have, a big swath across South Yorkshire and also in Cheshire. We'll look at that in a second. Okay, what we have here, this is the two players who were at the Easingwold debate that I attended about a month ago now. Kevin Hollinrake, the MP for Rydale, and Tom Pickering. Kevin Hollinrake, in the course of the debate, was literally trying to press home his attachment to unconventional gas exploitation on the basis that it was absolutely crucial for energy security, for national energy security. Well, he was on the panel with Tom Pickering, who's the Chief Operations Officer with INEOS Upstream, and he was sort of, I wouldn't say reticent, but he avoided getting caught in that particular discussion, because INEOS have absolutely no intention whatsoever of putting the gas that they mine into the national grid. And I put up this graphic from that discussion with Kevin Hollinrake, the fracking myth. Fracking is essential for UK energy security. And he must have made that statement half a dozen times at least during the Easingwold debate. Meanwhile, at the other end of the table, Tom Pickering thinking to himself, well, great line, Kevin, very emotive, but actually all the INEOS fracked gas will be used in INEOS chemical plants to maximise INEOS profitability. And of course, INEOS is a private company. It's not even listed on the exchange. It's a private company. It's effectively the personal fiefdom of Jim Ratcliffe. And of course, the irony is Jim Ratcliffe is a Beverley boy.
Yeah, went to school here.
Went to the grammar school.
Yeah, likes to make out it's a heavily industrialised area because he counted all the factory chimneys belching smoke out of his bedroom window when he was a kid, so a few fracking wells won't make any difference. What rubbish. The thing to remember about the pipelines is one of the main pipelines goes from East Yorkshire up to Middlesbrough and the chemical plants there. But the nearest pipeline goes into what's called the Salt End Works, which is sort of labelled as BP, but is in fact an INEOS terminal, which has just been upgraded to improve its export potential. Now, who are they exporting to? You could say that he wants to load a tanker up and take it up to Grangemouth. But the whole point about hydrocarbons is it's the paradigm of a global market. It goes anywhere in the world by pipeline or by tanker, and it will take it where the stuff is needed and the price is right. The other thing about security, British Gas have got a 25-year contract to import liquefied natural gas from shale gas from America. And the deal is they pay at the agreed price, which applies for 25 years. And it's even better than that. They have to pay for it whether they take it or not. And the idea that somehow we're going to get cheap shale gas here and everybody's going to be happy when it's even cheaper to import it. These companies exist for profit. They don't exist to pump gas out you've experienced it, we've experienced it, being told that we're bad people because old people are going to die of the cold because we're stopping shale gas. What a load of rubbish. Absolute rubbish.
Now, the old people are dying because their benefits are being withheld and sanctioned or cut, and they're not able to afford the fuels, which, of course, since privatisation have just become astronomical because it's about profit.
And the previous schemes to insulate the homes of people on benefits and so on have been cut back. If you're bothered about energy security and you want to develop the economy, you'd have a mass programme of retrofitting of insulation to homes. You'd be pushing the solar and the onshore wind, because solar and onshore are far more secure against Russian submarines than tankers bringing fuel from America and so on.
Exactly.
The whole thing is nonsense, but you're absolutely right, Ian. INEOS in particular are doing it to secure the vital, constant supply of raw materials into Grangemouth, into Saltend, and so on.
So let's have a look at the INEOS target areas again. Let's go back to North Yorkshire here. So this great swath of land right over from just north of the Howardian Hills, another area of outstanding natural beauty, the edge of the North York Moors from the beautiful communities of Ampleforth and Helmsley and Gilling, right through Sheriff Hutton, through Kirkham Abbey, which gives its name to the geological strata there, right across almost to, not quite, over to the sort of Scarborough area. Now, then in South Yorkshire, from just north of Sheffield, right down through Chesterfield and Mansfield. So this is South Yorkshire, Derbyshire, and Nottinghamshire. And, all the people in this sacrifice zone, I wonder how they feel if they really actually understood that this is simply a corporation, a private corporation, looking to enhance its profitability so that Jim Ratcliffe, who's already got 2 yachts, one of which is a 100-foot yacht, has a crew of 23, plus he has 4 private jets. I mean, how many toys does this boy need?
Yeah, he's a Swiss. He's residents in Switzerland as well, doesn't he?
He claims that he moved to the UK last year, but the move to Switzerland was contrived when he tried to hold the British government to ransom, but he contrived it because what he was doing was he was looking for an excuse to move the headquarters of INEOS to Switzerland so that he could actually make the company more tax efficient. And it's reported that the move to Switzerland saved INEOS £700 million in tax. I mean, this is the nature of the beast that you're dealing with here. And then the last area, the other side, the Pennines, is over in Cheshire. And you can see here, centred on Northwich, but, then right through the sort of Knutsford area, almost across to Greater Manchester. But, this is the smaller of the 3 large tracts of land that INEOS have. It's 1 million acres in England. And, of course, INEOS have put and are continuing to put enormous pressure on the Scottish government to lift the moratorium in Scotland. And, of course, INEOS has designs on exploiting the unconventional gas right across the central belt of Scotland, the most densely populated part of Scotland, and purely for the benefit. And they'll do the same thing. They'll blackmail people in Scotland saying, we employ 4,000 people at Falkirk. And just like they did back in 2010, if you don't bend over and take it as we deliver it, then, everyone's going to lose their jobs. And I mean, this for me is prima facie sociopathy. To have this attitude when the only gain is private profit.
Yeah. And damn the consequences for hundreds of years to come. You see, if you take Kevin Hollingake seriously with his worry about security of energy, what's been the result of giving the North Sea companies 1.6 billion of tax easements, of dropping the tax bill on to keep the North Sea industry going? they're currently pumping out more oil and gas than they've ever pumped out before. And they're doing that because they want to get rid of the asset and get some money back before the various restrictions that will come in on the use of hydrocarbons means that the stuff can't be sold anymore. Certainly not at the price they need to charge for the North Sea. This precious resource, because oil and gas is a precious resource, there are all sorts of applications. I can't imagine a solar-powered helicopter coming to rescue my brother-in-law from his motorbike accident anytime soon. You do need aviation fuel, for example. It should be rationed. It should be protected for future generations. It's got its uses. Use it sparingly and sensibly. But don't just let people squander it and get rid of it and make as much profit as they can this year, forget about next year. This is the economics of the matter.
But John, you and I have had the discussion previously. I mean, we have never, ever needed to use hydrocarbons in anything like the quantities that, they use there, 90 million barrels a day. The primary purpose of a hydrocarbon-driven economy is, one, to enable the US primarily to maintain its global hegemony, and secondly, to generate tax revenues, because hydrocarbons, the easiest way for the governments to raise taxation after direct taxation of income tax and corporation tax. But, we're in the twilight years of hydrocarbons. I mean, when I say twilight years, I'm talking 30 to 50.
The best way to raise taxes was to start taxing the oil and gas industry properly. But
exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah, I know. But what they do is the oil and gas industry effectively blackmails the British government, and of course, as we've seen, the British government always puts people in the positions of ministers who have no experience whatsoever. Yeah. So that they can be manipulated by their civil servants, and the civil servants are manipulated by, the lobbyists working on behalf of the corporations. I mean, once you know how the system works, of course, you can see, how it's being manipulated and how basically, particularly the people at the lower end of the food chain, just get totally and royally shafted.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah. Hey, listen, we're going to take a short break, and in this break, we're going to look at a short video that was put together by, I think it was Jono Houston, about the Leith Hill camp. So we'll go to the other end of the country, because, a lot of people think that it's only the north of England that's being targeted, but there are pockets of the south of England that are being targeted, and one of the ones that actually has suffered in the same way as the people of Lancashire, the people in the communities around Leith Hill in Surrey. Dorking is the nearest large town. There's a number of smaller communities around that area, Holmwood, Bear Green, and of course Leatherhead's not too far away, Fetcham, Bookham. But this is an area that Surrey County Council a number of years ago denied Europa the permission to drill a well on Forestry Commission land inside an area of outstanding natural beauty. And this was overturned by the British government, because the British government doesn't care what communities think. It's just going to pursue its agenda. So just take a look at this short video, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a bit about what's going on in Surrey.
Tea, milk, biscuits, those nails. Coming to visit the Leith Hill protection camp. We are along the base camp.
Boa noite, povo, que eu cheguei. Mas outra vez apresenta meu baianão. Eu vou cantar com muita alegria. Não acontece.
Okay, well, that's Leith Hill. Now, the camp manifested there about 3 weeks ago or so, and it's on Forestry Commission land. So one of the bylaws there is that there can be no fire. So obviously the protection community are very cognizant of this. So they're having to be very creative in finding ways to stay warm, and thus you saw the straw bale house being built, the shelter being built to protect the protectors from the rigors of the weather. And boy, has it rained over the last few days. So, I mean, I hope they've managed to stay dry. But this is the area that is potentially under attack. So what's happening is that people who live in the south of England don't realise that, you know, there's a few targeted areas across the Weald. But, you know, that's just effectively to test the water, if you like, or test the oil. But to start preparing the communities there. And one has to say that, you know, Horse Hill, which is only 8 kilometres away, 12 kilometres, 8 miles away from Leith Hill, this is a dormitory area to Gatwick Airport. And getting the local community to comprehend the magnitude of the threat here is nigh on impossible. I mean, if it wasn't for the protection community and a handful of local people in the Horse Hill area, then you might as well have laid out the red carpet for UCOG. Now, I have to say that it does look like Dorking's going to be a completely different kettle of fish, as it were. This is the well site. This is the well site at Horse Hill. And this is what Europa Oil and Gas want to build inside the ancient forested area of Leith Hill sometime early in next year. Of course, Surrey County Council, no qualms. I believe it was pretty much unanimous in rejecting the application, but the British government says, well, sorry, we don't care. We're going to establish this in your area. And I think the communities around Dorking are definitely going to have something to say about that. And I have to say that the response to the camp and the support to the camp there on the lower reaches of Leith Hill has been absolutely fantastic. And one of the delays has come about there because Europa have put in an application to establish a double-layered security fence around their potential well site. So in addition to the pad like at Horse Hill, it's also going to have this razor wire. So it's going to be like a, you know, a concentration camp type appearance in this beautiful area. And I just want to go back to here because also what you see is what the industry refers to as state-of-the-art noise attenuation. And what that means is containers piled too high, that's too, as in TWO, high, and then, you know, covered in a tarpaulin, and that's supposed to be noise attenuation. And in fact, Third Energy have now submitted an application to North Yorkshire County Council for permission to establish the noise attenuation barrier all around. So, Jon and Val, it's going to be a very interesting 2017. And in fact, I have the sense that basically, you know, we're coming to the end of 4 years since the lifting of the moratorium. We're coming up to episode 100. This is episode 98, episode 100 of Fracking Nightmare. I don't think any of us expected to get through 4 years. I don't think any of us expected to get to episode 100. I don't think any of us expected the price of oil to tank from $115 a barrel down to the 44, 45 bucks that it is right now, where this whole industry really has the question of viability, you know, hanging over it. So I think the next 6 months is going to be seminal in deciding whether or not this industry actually does get a foothold in the UK, or the British public are able to get the message across to the industry and the government that no means no.
Exactly.
How say you?
Yeah, we agree. And it is great to be coming to the end of another frack for a year in the East Riding, bearing in mind that Rathlin were enthusiastic. They were going to get on site immediately in 2015. They didn't get on site in 2015. They didn't get on site in 2016. They're in serious financial difficulty. They were going to start at West Newton B during the summer holidays to avoid the school traffic. Did they do it? No. And I do think the price of energy is one of the factors. The other factor is the escalating use of renewable energy in the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, with this government with its head truly in the shale rocks, thinking that that's the future when it isn't. That's the past. It's it's dinosaur stuff, isn't it?
It is, literally and metaphorically. And of course, it's almost 2 years exactly since Rathlin Energy destroyed the integrity of the fishing lake at Whiten, the lake that they had promised. David Montague-Smith personally promised that Rathlin Energy would take full responsibility for reparations. 2 years on, fortunately, Anthony Scott, the owner of the farm, despite his medical condition, he is still hanging on in there. And as I stated in court, it does look as though Rathlin Energy, i.e. David Montague-Smith, are literally waiting for Anthony Scott to die so that they can make his widow and daughter an offer that they can't refuse. And I mean, this is the kind of, again, the sociopathy that we're dealing with. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to close. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Always a pleasure. Of course, I'm sure I'm going to be up in your neck of the woods in the not too distant future. And I gather you've actually got yourselves a caravan now, so you can be part of the itinerant community.
Oh yes, we'll be there. Yeah, that'll be right.
Yeah, and well, listen, we need to recognise that although we are fast entering a period where not only are we up against a government that's driven by the corporate agenda, we're entering a period where we're looking at surveillance like we've never known before. We're seeing children effectively experiencing the same as the Hitler Youth were being taught back in the 1930s, to reveal the political leanings or environmental leanings of parents and friends. But I guess we should be thankful that we are not yet having to endure the rigours that are being applied by police and other law enforcement agencies in North Dakota at Standing Rock. Now, we will be talking about this more in episode 99, but I want to just close out tonight with a short clip of the atrocious treatment of the protection community in North Dakota. This is the direct Dakota Access Pipeline, and the fact that the company wants to put it right across ancient, sacred burial grounds of the native community there. And right across America, people are coming to their support. But nonetheless, whether or not Donald Trump, as a corporatist, gets involved and finds another solution. But sadly, Obama, of course, is a lame duck president right now and basically has literally said, well, we'll just see how it plays out. Let's hope that the British police are still at least a few years away from having to resort to such tactics. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Jon and Val. I look forward to hooking up with you guys again in the very near future. And this is Standing Rock, North Dakota.
Protesters at the Dakota Access Pipeline continue to be met with insane violence, and our very own Jordan Cheriton reports and shows us exactly what they're dealing with. Take a look.
So where you're seeing the police, whether it's state police, DAPL security, they're on top of a giant mountain that is where their ancestors are buried, the Native Americans.
The natives want to go and hold a peaceful prayer circle on the other bank. This is land that is theirs per the Laramie Treaty of 1851. This is a sacred burial site. But also, they're saying it's Army Corps of Engineer lands, which means on multiple levels what's happening here is illegal. This is a militarized police force up against an unarmed, peaceful prayer for people.
So I was out there, one of the first ones in the water. Maced us, it hurts, it hurts.
feel like I'm watching the salt mine protest with Gandhi. I mean, these people are in the water. They're freezing to death. This water is not warm.
I couldn't feel my legs. I had to get out or I was about to pass out.
Save our water!
They're trying to disperse women and children because there's a fear that the cops that are coming in on those boats over there have actual bullets.
The police are committing genocide!
I see a sniper laying right there on the ridge. You can see his rifle sticking over the edge of the ridge right there. The sniper is not holding rubber bullets, I guarantee you.
These people from the North Dakota Police Force and the United States government has lost legitimacy in every respect today.
President Obama needs to step in and intervene before we have loss of life on either side.
You guys ever see anything like this?
This is absolutely insane, man. These people are just trying to protect their families, protect their water.
It's like a row of dominoes. You got one maced over here, one maced over here, one maced over here.
Whoa. All right, let's go.
Did they give you warning that they were going to mace you?
Oh, not at all. Sitting there with my hands up, and I told him I love you, and the guy came and sprayed us. They sprayed me in the face for probably 6-7 seconds, and I just stood there until they were done.
Once you feel the power of these people, I mean, it brings tears to your eyes. People, they're fighting.